Good morning, Ron and Penny. I hope you can hear me all right. I did a sound check and I think everything's okay. I'm setting my timer for 11 minutes and I will go ahead and start where we left off yesterday. Happy Sunday, by the way. It's a beautiful morning. Her husband, Faustin, or Faustin, as we thought his name was spelled for many weeks, was large and gentle, unhurried in his movements, and relatively slow with his words. He had been born in the valley, he had spent his life in the valley, and he would die in the valley. His father, Pepe Andre, who lived next to him, had shot his last boar at the age of 80, and had given up hunting to take up the bicycle. Twice a week he would pedal to the village for his groceries and his gossip. They seemed to be a contented family. They had, however, a concern about us, not only as neighbors, but as prospective partners. And through the fumes of marc and black tobacco and the even thicker fog of the accent, we eventually got to the bottom of it. Most of the 6 acres of land we had bought with the house was planted with vines, and these had been looked after for years under the traditional system of métayage. The owner of the land pays the capital costs of new vine stock and fertilizer, while the farmer does the work of spraying, cropping, and pruning. At the end of the season, the farmer takes 2/3 of the profits and the owner 1/3. If the property changes hands, the arrangement comes up for review, and there was Faustin's concern. Or Faustine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I seem a little off today. Sometimes I get nervous, I get stage fright, and so I brought my rocker out here. I'm just asking you guys to bear with me because performing isn't my thing. And to me, reading to, others, except for my kids, reading to others is performing, so I apologize. Okay. And there was, I think it's Faustin, I'm sorry, no, yeah, Faustin's concern. It was well known that many of the properties in the Louvre were bought as I'm having a tongue twister day. Résidence secondaire, used for holidays and amusement. Their good agricultural land turned into elaborately planted gardens. There were even cases of the ultimate blasphemy when vines had been grubbed up to make way for tennis courts. Tennis courts. Faustin shrugged with disbelief, shoulders and eyebrows going up in unison as he contemplated the extraordinary idea of exchanging precious vines for the curious pleasures of chasing a little ball around in the heat. Well, we all know how fun that is. I don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, he needn't have worried. We loved the vines, the ordered regularity of them against the sprawl of the mountain, the way they changed from bright green to darker green to yellow and red as spring and summer turned to autumn. The blue smoke of the pruning season as the clippings were burned, the pruned stumps studding the bare fields in the winter. They were meant to be here. Tennis courts and landscaped gardens weren't. Nor, for that matter, was our swimming pool. But at least it hadn't replaced any vines. And besides, there was the wine. We had the option of taking our profit in cash or in the bottle. And in an average year, our share of the crop would be nearly 1,000 liters of good, ordinary red and pink. As emphatically as we could in our unsteady French, we told Faustin that we would be delighted to continue the existing arrangement. He beamed. He could see that we would all get along very well together. One day, we might even be able to talk to each other. So cute. I'm just gonna take a drink. And a drink of water. The proprietor of Le Simeon wished us a happy new year and hovered in the doorway as we stood in the narrow street, blinking into the sun. Not bad, eh? He said with a flourish of one velvet-clad arm which took in the village. The ruins of the Marquis de Sade's chateau perched above. I'm looking at that and I'm like, is it Sade? There was a singer whose name was S-A-D-E and it was Sade. This says S-A-D-E and I'm like, I don't know, I guess it's Sade. chateau perched above, the view across to the mountains and the bright, clean sky. It was a casually possessive gesture, as if he was showing us, I think I'm rocking further away, but that's what rocking chairs do. It was a casually possessive gesture, as if he was showing us a corner of his personal estate. One is fortunate to be in Provence. Yes, indeed, we thought. One certainly was. If this was winter, we wouldn't be needing all the foul weather paraphernalia. Boots and coats and inch-thick sweaters that we had brought over from England. We drove home warm and well-fed, making bets on how soon we could take the first swim of the year, and feeling a smug sympathy for those poor souls in harsher climates who had to suffer real winters. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles to the north, the wind that had started in Siberia was picking up speed for the final part of its journey. We had heard stories about the Mistral. It drove people and animals mad. It was an extenuating circumstance in crimes of violence. It blew for 15 days on end, uprooting trees, overturning cars, smashing windows, tossing old ladies into the gutter, splintering telegraph poles, moaning through houses like a cold and baleful ghost, causing la tripe. I'm always rolling my R's. La tripe. Whatever. Domestic squabbles, absenteeism from work, toothache, migraine, every problem in Provence that couldn't be blamed on the politicians was the fault of the sacré vent, which the Provençaux spoke about with a kind of masochistic pride. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Typical Gaelic exaggeration, we thought. If they had to put up with the gales that come off the English Channel and bend the rain so that it hits you in the face almost horizontally, then they might know what a real wind was like. We listened to their stories, and to humor the tellers pretended to be impressed. I'm sorry, I don't know why I have to have everything centered all the time. Drives my family crazy. It's like, why does everything have to be so perfect? I'm like, I don't know, I just like things the way I like them. That's a line from a movie, actually. I'm just trying to get it right. There we go. Oh. And so we were poorly prepared when the first Mistral of the year came howling down the Rhone Valley, turned left and smacked into the west side of the house with enough force to skim roof tiles into the swimming pool and rip a window that had carelessly been left open off its hinges. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in 20 hours. It went to 0, then 6 below. Readings taken in Marseille showed showed a wind speed of 180 kilometers an hour. My wife was cooking in an overcoat. I was trying to type in gloves. We stopped talking about our first swim and thought wistfully about central heating. And then one morning, with the sound of branches snapping, the pipes burst, one after the other, under the pressure of water that had frozen in them overnight. Looks like we have about 3 minutes left. Maybe I'll put on an extra minute because I had all the asides where I was just talking, moving. My rocker is shifting as I rock. Anyway. They hung off the wall, swollen and stopped up with ice, and Monsieur Menicucci, I think, studied them with his professional plumber's eye. Oh la la, he said, oh la la. He turned to his young apprentice, whom he invariably addressed as jeune homme or jeune. You see what we have here, jeune. Naked pipes, no insulation. Côte d'Azur plumbing. In Cannes, in Nice, they would do, but here, he made a clucking sound of disapproval and wagged his finger under Jeune's nose to underline the difference between the soft winters of the coast and the biting cold in which we were now standing. And pulled his woolen bonnet firmly down over his ears. He was short and compact, built for plumbing, as he would say, because he could squeeze himself into constricted spaces that more ungainly men would find inaccessible. While we waited for Jeune to set up the blowtorch, Monsieur Menicucci delivered the first of a series of lectures and collected pensées, which I would listen to with increasing enjoyment throughout the coming year. Today we had a geophysical dissertation on the increasing severity of Provençal winters. I'm sorry, I always have trouble with those R's. My teacher in college told me to act like I was coughing. because I tend to roll my R's. Provençal winters. For 3 years in a row, winters had been noticeably harder than anyone could remember. Cold enough, in fact, to kill ancient olive trees. It was, to use the phrase that comes out in Provence whenever the sun goes in, pas normal. But why? Mr. Menicucci gave me a token 2 seconds to ponder this phenomenon before warming to his thesis, tapping me with a finger from time to time to make sure I was paying attention. It was clear, he said, that the winds which brought the cold down from Russia were arriving in Provence with greater velocity than before, taking less time to reach their destination, and therefore having less time to warm up en route. And the reason for this, Mr. Menicucci allowed himself a brief but dramatic pause, was a change in the configuration of the Earth's crust. Mais oui, somewhere between Siberia and Minerve, the curvature of the Earth had flattened, enabling the wind to take a more direct route south. It was entirely logical. Unfortunately, part 2 of the lecture, Why the Earth is Becoming Flatter. Let me put on 1 more minute. I know that isn't as much time as it took me to do all the stuff I did, but sorry, the one time I did a very long video and it wouldn't upload. I think I told you about that already. So I'm just trying not to make it too long so that I can upload it and I don't have to do it all over again. Okay. Unfortunately, part 2 of the lecture, Why the Earth is Becoming Flatter, was interrupted by a crack of another burst pipe, and my education was put aside for some virtuoso work with the blowtorch. The effect of the weather on the inhabitants of Provence is immediate and obvious. They expect every day to be sunny, and their disposition suffers when it isn't. Rain they take as a personal affront, shaking their heads and commiserating with each other in the cafes, looking with profound suspicion at the sky as though a plague of locusts is about to descend, and picking their way with distaste through the puddles on the pavement. If anything worse than a rainy day should come along, such as this sub-zero snap, the result is startling. Most of the population disappears. As the cold began to bite into the middle of January, the towns and villages became quiet. The weekly markets, normally jammed and boisterous, were reduced to a skeleton crew of intrepid stallholders who were prepared to risk frostbite for a living, stamping their feet and nipping from hip flasks. I'm sorry, I have to take a drink. I tend to hold my breath, and it's like, gotta breathe now. I'm trying not to lose my place. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Customers moved briskly, bought and went, barely pausing to count their change. Bars closed their doors and windows tight and conducted their business in a pungent fog. There was none of the usual dawdling on the streets. Our valley hibernated, and I missed the sounds that marked the passing of each day, almost as precisely as a clock. Faustin's rooster, having his morning cough, the demented clatter like nuts and bolts trying to escape from a biscuit tin, of the small Citroën van that every farmer drives home at lunchtime, the hopeful fusillade of a hunter on afternoon patrol in the vines on the opposite hillside, the distant whine of a chainsaw in the forest, the twilight serenade of farm dogs. Now there was silence. For hours on end, the valley would be completely still and empty, and we became curious. What was everybody doing? Faustin, we knew, traveled around the neighboring farms as a visiting slaughterer, slitting the throats and breaking the necks of rabbits and ducks and pigs and geese so that they could be turned into terrine and hams and confit. Sorry, Charlie, I know he hates hearing that. We thought it an uncharacteristic occupation for a soft-hearted man who spoiled his dogs, but he was evidently skilled and quick, and like any true countryman, he wasn't distracted by sentiment. We might treat a rabbit as a pet or become emotionally attached to a goose, but we had come from cities and supermarkets where flesh was hygienically distanced from any resemblance to living creatures. A shrink-wrapped pork chop has a sanitized, abstract appearance that has nothing whatever to do with the warm, mucky bulk of a pig. Out here in the country, there was no avoiding the direct link between death and dinner. And there would be many occasions in the future when we would be grateful for Faustin's winter work. So that is the end of this session. I hope you enjoyed it. You guys have a really great, blessed Sunday. Take care.